Slay the Spire 2 is a game that gives the player a ton of agency in building their deck. You get to choose your card rewards from combat encounters, the cards you take and remove in shops, event encounters that give you things like enchantments, curses, and that f***ing bridge that I hate. Possibly one of the most important aspects about deck building, though, is choosing what cards to upgrade. Upgrading cards can do a lot of things, from increasing their damage or block, to lowering their energy cost, and even adding extra positive effects, or possibly removing negative ones from the card. This is great, but the issue lies in the fact that you don't really get to upgrade every card you pick up. You can choose to upgrade them at a rest stop, some events upgrade cards for you, and sometimes you can find pre-upgraded cards and rewards in shops, but even so, you'll probably never get to fully upgrade your deck in a run. But what if we could max out our deck? Slay the Spire 2 is not a complete game, and with that comes a lot of bugs. Mainline patch version 0.99.1 has a little bug that lets you upgrade multiple cards at once at zero cost. While selecting a card to upgrade, you could actually use the arrow keys and the enter key on your keyboard to select additional cards in the background to upgrade, allowing you to upgrade literally every card you own in a single rest stop. With the Pomander, an ancient relic that Niao can offer you at the start of the run, you could upgrade your entire deck before even entering the first encounter, meaning it was not only possible, but incredibly comfortable to play an entire run with only upgraded cards. Now, fortunately for the health of the game, this was patched out 2 days ago as of writing this, with mainline patch version 0.103.2, so this no longer works. The rules for this challenge, if you could even call it that, are simple. I can only use upgraded cards. If I cast an unupgraded card, whether intentionally or by accident, I have to restart the run. No exceptions. Does this balance out the fact I'm literally cheating? Not even slightly, but at the very least, it'll be interesting to see how far I can take this. I chose to play the Defect since I felt like I had never really had a great run with them, and I was curious to see what they could do. Getting into the run, after a couple of resets at Niao, I found a Pomander and went through the process of upgrading all of my cards, giving me quite a power boost before my first combat. This was made evident pretty much immediately as I cleared my first encounter in a single turn. I took a charge battery card here, and while I can't use it yet, it'll be nice to have as a better block option once I can upgrade it. My second combat was just barely harder, taking 3 turns and a whopping single damage to get through. This combat yielded me a claw card, giving me an idea of what I wanted to build towards moving forward. My next encounter was a chance room, where the doorman from Deadlock upgraded my cards and sent me on my way. I then bought another claw in my first shop, upgraded it immediately after, and strapped in for a few more combat encounters. This led me into my first elite encounter of the run against a shulking colony, which, while it isn't a difficult encounter, it can be a little time consuming even with as much power as I have now. The elite has this effect where it caps the amount of damage it can take per turn, basically putting a minimum turn count on the fight. It's no big deal, and it still dies without issue, but it is still good to keep in mind that the game will always have some way around my bullshit. A couple of extra encounters, a few new cards, and one rest stop later, I hit another elite, this time against a terror eel. This fight can be one of the scarier elites in Act 1. It hits pretty hard for how early in the game we are, but more importantly, it can apply vulnerable to us, making the damage it can deal quite a bit worse. It can also apply vigor to itself, giving it even more ways to obliterate your health. Fortunately for me, I was able to kill it fast enough to dodge a massive 36 damage hit they had charged up for me, but if this were an actually normal run, this fight could have gone much worse. This fight gave me the Courier, a frankly crazy sounding relic that I was really excited to put into use. Just a few more encounters and a handful of new cards later, I was up against my Act 1 boss, the Soulfish. This thing is a pretty big pushover normally, and this run was obviously no exception. The Soulfish's main mechanic is that it adds these beckon cards into your deck, which deal a flat 6 HP through block at the end of your turn if they're still in your hand. This can actually be a bit of a nuisance sometimes, since they force you to spend more energy on defending yourself to remove them. This run, though, completely kills any stakes with energy management, however, as not only have I picked up several zero-cost cards, but my Zap and Dual Cast cards lose their energy cost on upgrade, meaning I can kind of just mash actions anyway while staying alive perfectly fine. By the end of turn 10, I had only taken 13 damage, while the Soulfish had taken all of it. With that, Act 1 is already over, and I took an Adaptive Strike for my boss reward. Pretty cool card, even if I can't use it just yet. Going into Act 2, Pale gave me his flesh, kinda weird, but it gives me a better energy economy, so I'm not gonna complain. Going into my first encounter, I was pretty excited about where this run was going. I had a strong deck, good relics, a nice potion stack to work with, and well, that's really annoying, but it's also completely my fault. I had zero reason to use Adaptive Strike here, like genuinely none. I could have used a normal strike and gotten just as much damage, and it's not like this fight would have dragged long enough for the Adaptive Strike copies to even matter. I just went on autopilot, used a card I shouldn't have, and was forced to reset. My second run started much like the first, with a single turn encounter against the same Nautilus-looking thingy. I picked up a boot sequence and then was offered a choice between this and that. As a that man myself, I chose that and received a candelabra for extra energy gain on the second turn of each combat. My next encounter gave me a fight through, and a little while later I was finally able to upgrade the cards I'd picked up so far, unlocking them for use. My relic chest gave me War Paint, which oh so conveniently upgraded the Lightning Rod card I had picked up in the encounter before it. I had another Shulking Colony encounter, which gave me a Tuning Fork and another Lightning Rod. At this point, I was kind of leaning into a Lightning build and oh no. So, I didn't realize it while I was playing, but I accidentally played my unupgraded Lightning Rod, and unfortunately, seeing as this has now been patched, I can't really go back and play this run again. Did the 3 block and single additional lightning really make much of a difference in this fight? Probably not, but either way, I broke the one rule I have, kinda sorta invalidating the run. So no, I didn't beat Slay the Spire 2 with only upgraded cards, but I don't care, I'm still gonna play this out. At my last rest stop before the Act 1 boss, I upgraded my newly found Rocket Punch and that Lightning Rod that I hate before moving forward to the boss. The Lagavulin? How the f do I say that? The Matriarch. This thing doesn't really have any gimmicks or anything I can think of. It kinda just has a lot of health and does some good damage. The main difficulty of this fight is that as time goes on, the boss will occasionally debuff your strength and dexterity, which can be a bit of a problem if you take too long. Fortunately for me though, the defects orbs are unaffected by most standard buffs, so I still have pretty solid damage and get through without much trouble. The boss fell and gave me a machine learning power that would come in handy later. Moving into Act 2, my absolute goat Aerobus gave me an Archaic Tooth, upgrading my dual cast into a quad cast. This is easily one of the strongest cards I took throughout the entirety of the run, and it was insane for my damage. Pretty early into the act, I hit up a shop where I bought an Eternal Feather for extra healing, a boost away for my newly found status build, and removed one of my strikes to thin the deck just a little bit. A little while later, I picked up an upgraded Bulk Up, which further cemented that this would in fact become a status build as time went on. A nice chunk of strength and dexterity at the cost of just one orb slot is way too good to pass up, even if it means 3 less potential chip damage at the end of a turn. Moving on, I picked up an upgraded Gunk Up and got to finally upgrade my machine learning card. My next chance encounter introduced me to this guy wearing what looks to be armor made out of a bunch of dead bugs, who then asks me if I'd like some help killing bugs too. Now, I personally am a bit of a bug fan, but no matter the intent behind it, I will absolutely take a card that lets me apply 2 stacks of vulnerable. Speaking of bugs, it's time to fight the evil sinister bee guy with my newly upgraded squash card. This fight can be pretty annoying, since this guy does pretty high damage and also likes to fill your deck with dazed cards, but I have so much damage potential at this point that I don't think it really matters. Killing them gave me a shovel and an upgraded thunder, meaning that I now have the potential to deal upwards of 60 damage with a single quad cast. I also got a pantograph from my first shovel hit, so I don't have to worry as much about my health going into boss encounters anymore. After a couple more encounters, I was at the Act boss, the Insatiable. This fight raised a pretty interesting question about this run. You see, the main gimmick of this boss is that in 4 turns, you die. That is, unless you play these frantic escape cards that it forcibly adds to your deck. The issue for us though is that these cards can't be upgraded. There just isn't an upgraded version of a frantic escape, so we have to ask ourselves whether we can allow these non-upgradable cards to be played. Banning them basically forces us to kill the boss as fast as we can, or else we are guaranteed to lose on turn 5. My response to this dilemma was, of course, not to think about it until rewatching the footage and to play the game as normal. There aren't really any other fights where the boss's status is so integral to the fight, so I figured it's fine to allow non-upgraded cards to be played just for this fight. Aside from the boss being able to eat you though, this fight isn't too difficult. Most of the challenge comes from managing when to use a frantic escape, as they increase in cost as you play them. With my build though, I was able to clear the fight by turn 8, long before the cost of these cards would have ever become an issue. This brings me into the third and final act of the game, where tanks gave me a sigh, giving me free extra block at the start of every turn. Moving through the start of the act, I encountered this spooky symbiote which very kindly transformed one of my strikes into a buffer after I set it on fire. A combat against a devoted sculptor gave me a second upgraded thunder, so now if I get really lucky, I can do just about 90 damage with one quadcast. In my next shop though, I got to eliminate just a little bit of that luck with a royal stamp, which enchants any one of my attacks or skills with innate and retain. I used this on my quadcast to ensure I would always have it in my starting hand, and I also bought a sturdy clamp so I could retain a little bit of block from my previous turn. I then found a whole bunch of relics in the encounters that followed, one of which being a miniature cannon, which buffs all upgraded attacks by 3 damage. Very nice. After one final combat encounter, I took my last rest stop to finally upgrade my buffer from earlier in the act, leaving me with a fully upgraded deck of cards, full health, and a pretty solid relic set going into the finale against the test subject. Turn 1, I used my machine learning card for extra draws and started stacking some block. This run, although it's nowhere near as tanky as my final Ironclad run from the wheel video, has quite a lot of block to work with, meaning I can pretty comfortably spam block and just let my orbs deal chip damage to coast through a lot of fights. On turn 2, on top of my additional block, I also play my buffer card for the first and only time, giving me 2 free instances of unblocked damage before my health can actually be hit. I also cast Thunder and Bulk Up this turn to further build up my strength, and on turn 3, I found my second Thunder and finally used my first quad cast of the fight to completely obliterate the remainder of the test subject's health, ending the first phase. I took the dead turn to stack up a lightning rod so I could get some more orb use, and started the second phase. With my sturdy clamp and sai, I can start most turns with 17 block, so I'm pretty capable of tanking just about any hit that gets thrown at me without needing to dip into my buffer. On turn 5, I applied vulnerable using my squash and stacked up another lightning rod so that I could just keep laying more and more lightning orbs into the boss. Each evoked orb currently does about 24 damage, so I made a point to spam lightning as much as I could. On turn 7, the second phase fell, and I still had yet to take any damage through block, let alone through my buffer either. For the most part, that's just how this fight played. I would spam as much block as possible, getting orb damage where I could. Turn 9 though was a different story. For the first time this entire fight, I pulled no block. Instead, I pulled so much damage that I dropped the boss from 271 down to just 63 health in a single turn. Then, because I still have full buffer, the test subject didn't even get to hit me back. On turn 11, with one final gunk up, the test subject went down for the last time, and I cleared the fight without even taking a single point of damage. And with that, I was done. Now, did I beat the game with only upgraded cards? No, not really, but I was pretty damn close, and either way, I had a lot of fun with this run. Of course, it's a good thing that this has been patched, since this absolutely counts as cheating, but regardless, I still had a blast pushing the silly little robot to commit horrific crimes with lightning. Anyway though, that's gonna be it from me. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, thank you for watching.